SATSANG 1. SHANTINILAYA Lifehouse, Spain, August 1, 2020. It's August, that's it. Oh well, there's Kenshi, it's true, I forgot Kenshi. Elisa, Kenshi. Elisa. Translation: I left, there was a feast outside. There was a lot of noise outside. I put on headphones. I put music in my ears because there was a lot of noise outside. So I put on headphones. Elisa. I felt an effervescence in my body. We were capturing the transience of everything that was happening. It was after listening to all that all day long, it was time to let go of all that and go to the light. So you let go of everything, and in everything you were a part of everything. Then I left, and this morning, as if there was no difference between the dream, I woke up and I didn't make any difference between the dream. There was a continuity, everything was a dream. Well, that's very good. Elisa. There is no difference between the dream and the waking up. It's like a continuity of the dream. That's right, it's a dream. Sister. And other places, the real now. It's that now you can see the dream but real. That is to say, we see it unfolding, we see it manifesting itself, and we see the thread that leads, and this thread, it is in all of them because, when we look, you are each at the same moment, we are each talking about the same thing, but each one is in his universe and each one is climbing to his bar or to his traffic. There you go, in the same way, at the same time, it always remains at the same time. Another sister. And you, Elisa. Laughs. Elisa. Well, I had like a big iron plate in my chest, it was as if I had everyone there, I was suffocating. So I asked Mikhail to put a stone in my chest and then I did. I let go and I don't remember anything. What did he put you as a stone? A pink quartz. Elisa. A quartz? Well yes, pink quartz. Elisa. And that made me puff. Laughs. Well, come on, who's throwing the SATSANG? Question of something else, whatever you want. Elisa. There is someone from Uruguay who asked me a question. Go ahead. Elisa. But I didn't understand the question. So maybe if you understand it, I can translate it for you. Elisa. Someone from Uruguay. Where is she? Here it is. In Spanish, you read it to them first in Spanish. Elisa. For Jean-Luc, in relation to the moon. Today the hierarchies of freed the moon. Well, I read you, there were the hierarchies that operated in assistance to humanity and plans for planetary ascension. What is certain, or what aspect, certain spirituals reside like that mirror over there, that in spite of that of the moment it is, that the event will happen is being carried out, what will happen? Elisa. I didn't understand anything about that. It is someone who apparently had visions, images. Elisa. Yes, certainly, but on the moon. So she asks about the moon. But the moon. Elisa. Hierarchies of assistance in the moon, but in the moon there is no assistance. There is no assistance anywhere. The so-called extraterrestrials are all there in the consciousness of the earth, all without exception. But now, once again, this is a vision and the truth is without vision. Which does not preclude having it. So the question that arises after this vision is to have explanations without the vision. You see what I mean? Elisa. Yes. Translate. Laughter. Elisa. I'm trying to understand because I didn't understand the question. There's no question, he has a vision and that's the worst thing you can do when you have visions is to ask someone else to explain it to you. Laughter. So yes, dreams, even REM spent years deciphering dreams, but dreams are not visions. Remember what Biddy said in 2012 for those who knew him at that time. The dream is the real, that is to say that it is much more related to reality than our life, as long as we are in the person. The dream is the real, as long as one is not totally liberated. That is why REM helped a lot in the interpretation of dreams, but any interpretation of a vision does not make you available to live it, because you grasp the thing, and you want to understand it, and as long as you want to understand it, enlightenment does not come. Elisa, so the visions are not real? No, they're not. Sister, they're part of. They reflect a level of reality. Truth is without vision. There's no one, there's no form. There's not even light. It's the natural state, it's where you are. Elisa, so, she was saying that she was not losing anything then? No, you lose nothing, you find everything. It's a passage where you actually feel that your perceptions become blunted. There's nothing left, because you're getting closer to the 0 point, to emptiness. You mustn't cling to it. You have to let it be what it is, but then your perceptions will come back. But you have to go through what has been called the Great Silence, to see and experience for yourself that what is real is not a concept. There has never been anyone, it all belongs to the dream. So there is no loss, no mistake. At a given moment, which is variable for each one, you actually realize. Noises in the microphone. How many necklaces do you have? Elisa, it's that. You have to try. Yes, what were we saying? Laughs, Elisa. Today, it's a bummer. We're a bit floating. Yes, it's normal. Elisa, that's the care you gave me yesterday. Elisa, it will be better in an hour. To finish what I was saying to Isabel, it is a passage actually through this great silence we're there. It is there that you understand it by living it without asking for anything. The light comes from the which is prior to the light, and that is what you are living. That is to say, from the moment there is this great immobility, this great silence, this emptiness. Of course, everyone has the impression that the visions disappear, the energies, the radiation. It is precisely the passage to 0 time. This is the moment when what has been called the double terrace of the heart, with a movement of energy that goes to the left from the heart to curiosity and from the other side of curiosity to the heart. It is the balance of that two forces, the double terrace, that makes you live the truth. And it necessarily passes through the state for those who feel, for those who perceive, through the transitory cessation, which is not constant but lasts for a moment, when there is nothing more. And it is there where fear can arise, especially for those who feel, who see, who perceive, because it is indeed, for the manifested world, nothingness and the absolute that is an error, a horror. Whereas people who do not have perception, or energy, or vibration, or vision, today are much closer to the truth than all of us who feel energies, or vibrations, or anything else. So, it is necessary to go through a rest phase called 0 time, which makes you live the present instant, in totality, and it is there where you'll clearly live that everything else is bullshit, it is not true. The energies, they pass as your life passes, and what you are, as they say, does not pass. And then it's over. As Eckhart Tolle said, it is the end of the engine of suffering, it is the stopping at the engine of suffering. Suffering is linked only to the belief in a person's self. I'm not even talking about ego, in the idea of being a person. Besides, we are all subject to conditioning, karmic, behavioral, even astrological, but the liberated, in quotation marks, the one who has understood the natural state by living it, can no longer be fooled by all that. This does not mean rejecting it, but going through it. At that moment, you can work in energetics, with the chakras, with whatever you want, but, as I say, you are no longer fooled and there, freedom is total. The natural state is so compelling, in quotation marks, so striking, when it is discovered. The hardest thing is to accept that you can't do anything about it. You can't grasp the experience, because that's the natural state. The natural state, you are here and now, you can only be here and now, even if you have experienced, lived all the dimensions. Once you have lived it, you can no longer be deceived, even if they're visions, energies and you see things, and that is where life flows. For example, you are an osteopath, at some point you will realize that everything you decode with your hands, with your perceptions, does not need to be seen or explained to the patient, and at that moment, what will happen? You have no more information, no more perceptions as you say, you let life beyond your hands will really act on their own, without trying to direct, without trying to understand, and the results will be 10 times more real, that is to say, it will be immediate. Besides, it is not only an osteopathy, for all those who are in a helping relationship of any kind. If you accept to let your knowledge go through without monopolizing it, you are not going to enter into a relationship with the person, because the relationship, the communication, the energy, there are always two people, whereas if you place yourself in the reception, in the listening beyond any referential, beyond any knowledge, at that moment, it acts. To be there, to be available beyond any referential, beyond any knowledge, at that moment it acts. Being there, being available, whether you use needles, your hands, crystals, plants, knowledge, it's in the background, but you don't use it anymore. And in osteopathy, it's very obvious. We have a lot of friends, brothers and sisters who are osteopaths, and it's the moment when they let go of their knowledge, their techniques, that the technique is magnified. At that moment, you are no longer in a relationship or in communication, you are in what is called a gate resonance, a resonance of silence, of listening to the other, of absorbing the other, without needing to feel where it hurts, without needing to take its pain, but you directly touch the truth thanks to this neutrality. It is benevolence, it is listening, it is welcoming. All the osteopaths who have taken the step don't even know what they're doing anymore. They don't control anything, and it is much more efficient, because they are in the natural state, and at that moment to the other, by resonance, not by relation to the meaning that one understands, not by communication, but by your presence, which is resonance. The other can only find himself. Elisa, you described what happens to him, but afterwards it made me feel insecure not knowing what I was doing. Yes, because when you're a therapist, you use a frame of reference, and the frame of reference has to jump. It doesn't mean that your knowledge and your technique disappears, they are, automatically, they happen automatically, but you don't need to know it, that's the intelligence of light. So of course, it's confusing for the one who is used to understanding, to grasping, and I'm the first one like that too, but then it comes by itself and there's no loss. In neuroscience, this is what we call flow, FLOW, maximum neurobiological efficiency. It is in sport that we find this most often, in individual sport, not collective sport. It's someone who is going to learn sport. For example, if you take tennis or fencing, he trains, the perfection of the gesture, the training, and when these sportsmen and women reach a high enough level, they have all noticed, without exception, that the moments when they have won, it's the moment, as they say, when you have let go of everything. All the learning, the gesture, the movement doesn't need to be controlled anymore, and at that moment, this sportsman who lives it, he will remember it all his life, because that's when he wins. And this is perfectly explained in neuroscience by this notion of maximum neurobiological efficiency. It is the moment when everything that has been conscious and lucid, all the learning that has been lived, there too, leaves room for spontaneity. Everything that was conscious, that was analyzed, practiced, the perfection of the gesture, disappears from consciousness and acts alone. This is perfectly explained in neuroscience. I'm not going to get into the interactions of the cerebral connections, that's not why we're here. Laughs. But in sports psychology, we've identified that perfectly. The best sportsman is the one who magnifies and transcends his gesture, not by an effort. They all describe the same thing, but by a slackening. Everything becomes easy, there's no more fatigue, there's a kind of state that is close to ecstasy for the athlete. His whole body and his head is bathed in the neuromediator called oxytocin. He is in happiness, he is in the present, and that, he locates it. It's the same for the osteopath. The more you let go of your habits, your knowledge, the more they will be magnified and is done without you. If you understand this mechanism well, without apprehension and without questioning, then all your practice will be like that and you won't be able to do otherwise. Once again, you will not be in a helping relationship, you will not be in the role of the one who knows for the other who doesn't know, or the one who knows versus the one who doesn't know, and you naturally enter into resonance. Resonance is not a relationship, resonance is not communication, it is not even empathy, it is rather fusion and dissolution. This is the natural state and the truth. You see, Elisa, She noticed that also in her experience, and it is the doctor translated also for. What did she notice? Sister, I've been going through this at home, at my home, lately. I've been going through this. Sister, I've been going through exactly that, but I didn't know why. I didn't have a consultation with a therapist because I'm not very much of a therapist, or I see yellow, to be derived by a therapist, a doctor, psychologist, etc. And I didn't listen to the words, I didn't listen to the advice, and yet, in the end, it was going very well. That is to say, the people, the destiny that I notice for the people, the destiny that apparently fits. I didn't know, that's it. It wasn't even a practice, it was something else, a kind of resonance. I didn't have the explanation. It's precisely when you don't understand anything anymore, that you can't grasp anything. Sister. Exactly. That you're free. Whether it's through spontaneous letting go or through suffering, the resilience is the same. But when you've lived it once, even if there are apprehensions, anxieties, why it's not like before, etc. You know, whatever the facts tell you, that this is the truth, the only truth. So when you've lived this once, even if it's a moment that seems to disappear, the present instant, the natural state, is unlocked, it's open, and then what do you see? Interrupted by a phone ring. Sister, it's neurologically proven. Elisa, it's neurologically proven. Yes, of course it is. We're very, very far in neuroscience, all mystical phenomena, awakening of the Kundalini, leaving the body. In short, all mystical processes have been mapped at the level of the brain. Sister, I was given an X-ray, my X-ray was taken. If you've lived through it and if you let go right away, the transition period between before and after, to put it this way, will appear right away. But of course, since we have a hard head, especially therapists and those who feel and see, we have a hard time letting go. The one who has no vision, who has no energy, he will be even more available than us, happy, the simple-minded. This is the way to childhood and innocence. The helping relationship, it will always exist if you're a therapist, but it will be replaced by resonance, where there, you are completely the other, but without suffering, because as long as you're attached to it, what happens? You can feel the other person very well, and you can even somatize the pain or the disorder. And that's embarrassing, that's disturbing. On the other hand, if you embrace, whatever happens, whatever you perceive, it's swept away, you're going to feel it, but you won't suffer because you won't have stopped it. You will have gone through all these bangs of interference, all the illusions of the person, and the resonance will be established. And the more you get into the habit, yes, it's a new habit, but it's liberating, the more you're going to see freedom and, above all, efficiency. So, it is also a learning mechanism for all people who feel energies, who have visions, who have knowledge at any level, who are ultimately, in relation to truth, an obstacle. But again, when you have understood this mechanism and you see it at work. Above all, as has been said, you have to be quiet. Elisa. But that's not doing just anything. Elisa. It's not doing anything. You don't do anything. It's still the person who believes that. The one who is in the truth, he doesn't do anything. You have the impression, from the outside, that he does anything. You have the example at Francis, even we, 10, 15 years ago, we threw it out because we didn't understand. Acceptance, even if you don't perceive it, because it forgets incredible things, but from the person's point of view, it's nonsense. It's always the person who will be offended, disturbed, but when you're free, you can't be disturbed, and there you see, even if it bothers, it's no longer disturbing, because you've gone through the interference of anything. But if you're in the natural state, no matter what you look like, it's not just anything, on the contrary, it's spontaneity. It's what we call the Fulan Tao. It's the one who lets be what is, even in his body, lets his body move freely, without directing anything. So the one who is from the outside, who doesn't know that, of course, he says it annoys me, it bothers me, I can't concentrate, and he misses the welcome. Everything that bothers you, at all levels, concerns you, not the other one. It's a learning process, not to be passive and not react, but to cross over to see the truth beyond all appearances. With Francis, I have told it to some, we have lived things. We were in a place, not so long ago, it was in October when a brother found himself locked up but in a kitchen, where we could never open the door. We tried everything. Francis arrives, she makes us like this in front of the door, she pushes the door open. You remember that? Sister. Yes, but I used a tool. Didn't I? Sister. I used a tool. Because I know a little bit about it. I've been locked in my house, when the handle is broken, so, actually there was a tool. I turned a small knob inside the lock. It was not abracadabra. Laughs. For us from the outside, it was really abracadabra, because we had been trying to open the door for an hour. Laughter. In other words, when you accept the incomprehensible, it is understandable and intelligible instantly, because it forces you to cross your zones, have resistance. Because, yes, it is beyond comprehension, but there is a logic that is not related to what we know. So indeed, if you look at it with a look where there are a lot of entities, what's that thing? But no, it's the unfolding of life. Entities are everywhere. There are entities everywhere. You see. Sister. On the other hand, what I would like to do is to take you into this. In any circumstance much more dramatic than that, the other is just a mirror. Remember, what you hold, holds you, is the one who says who is, since the other is you. Until you understand that Idade is you, it is also you, but don't make a general identification. One prefers to identify oneself with a grave Melchizedek rather than the devil. But nothing is external. In the dynamics for those who perceive and live the energies, when I channeled out, when I went out of my body into any body of light, all people without exception saw it, felt it. But all this is cinema, because beforehand, everything is in you and all that you see is what is projected, that's all. It's a game, a video game, a theater scene. At the moment, it's more what we would call a morbid game, a dystopia. Morbid means a horrible game. See the adhesion of people to masks, to all that, and then to the virus, but it doesn't matter. When you're fed up and you don't know where to turn, what to think, what to understand, it means you're close to yourself. The other one is just a revealer or a hindrance to go around in circles. Everything is in its place. It is not a concept when we say that everything is in its place. It is to be lived. Another question. Sister. No, me. Go ahead. Sentence by sentence so Lisa can translate. Sister. Now, a lot of things are happening. I'm looking. I didn't know who the lady with the headband was, but I'm getting vibrations. The tears have come up. I'm feeling a lot of things here. Yes, because your consciousness is focused on perception, but not on silence. Sister. Yes, but I feel like I hear silence too. Yes, but all that is to be gone through and not to be eliminated or opposed, that's the staying still. Sister. I think that there are many things vibrating in me. What are they? JLA speaks to Elisa. The mother. I have to tell a funny story about mother. You know that there have been very few channels of mother, and one day if I get an incendiary email from a woman who says, I'm the reincarnation of mother. And she says, I don't allow you to express yourself. It's very delusional. As long as you're identified, without going through it, to anyone, you are not free. Even Abba. I've never been fooled. Basically I'm not Abba, but you all are. It is the last identification because it is not a shape, it is flames, real flames that have been arranged in a particular graph. It is the first shape in a particular pattern. You know it's A and B, then B inverted and A, mirror image, A B, B A. This is the moment when the play of mirror stops, the play of reflection, projection of the light as of the person stops, it stops and there the mirror shatters. There's no more possibility of reflection of the light, a projection of any astral or vibratory light, only this great silence remains. There's no more emanation, there's no more projection and, above all, there's no more body of suffering. What is the body of suffering? It is not only the ego, it is what we call the imaginary body, the dream body, and it is everything but freedom. You are trapped by the light, really and concretely, you are trapped by consciousness. Alisa, wait for me for 2 seconds. Yes. Alisa, trapped, translation. Let's continue. Alisa, how? Alisa, to be free, you don't have to go through the light. Alisa, she asks if to be free, you don't have to go through the light. For all those who have energies, visions, vibrations, yes. And at some point you're in the white paradise, you can have many visions, but at some point, Alisa, but it depends on what she calls going through the light. Yes, you have to let go. You are interior to the light, and as long as you're in the light, as they say, in the self, you are still in the shimmer of consciousness. You have identified with your consciousness. You are no longer identified with the body, yet you know that you're in the body, but you are still brought into what is called spiritual pride, and that is where the problems begin. You think you're a Melchizedek, you think you're a star, you think you're a teacher, and then you're instantly trapped. All the Melchizedek who have spoken have all been confronted with this position of master, which is only a position of power, and there the drifts appear. The drifts, what are they? Predation, hypersexualization, pedophilia, Satanism, because it is linked to the second chakra. And as soon as you exercise an ascendancy, I'm not talking about the therapists there, I'm really talking about those who position themselves as that, and there you're cooked, and there is no possibility of avoiding it. That's why, what is called pedophilia is so much developed in religions, all of them, without exception, but also in spiritual groups. You have to disengage, you have to be free. Autonomy is real or it is not. And most of the Melchizedeks have been fooled. As soon as there's regrouping, as soon as there's direction and decision by someone in your place, you submit, you are never free, even with Amram with the White Brotherhood. I have known many brothers and sisters who were with Amram during his lifetime, who did not appreciate it, but they are all total immaturity. They considered Amram as their father, they never liberated themselves, even today. Kill all the masters. There are no more masters than archangels, it is still an intermediate plan. I had the chance to channel them, but in the end, it was their goal all the same, to bring us to understand the deception. The Melchizedeks are not shadow beings, but in the man, not in the woman. As soon as there's a power, or an ancestry that is consented, and even if you're not empowered but there's worship, people are trapped. I have always refused to be seen as a master, as a teacher, even though I have lived things, but it is very hard to accept freedom, because freedom is also the passage through this zero time, where there is nothing to feel, except to settle in the present instant. And there you see the swindle of spirituality, of religions of any kind, but also of all this energetic cinema, all these visions, all these chakras, all these stars and doors. We lived them, so it's real. For all those who have lived the activations, it is real, of course, but it is not the truth. It's just a step that corresponded to the descent of the experimental in 1984, but you had to, if you want to channel people, especially those who are in spirituality, not to go down these side paths. I often quote Sri Aurobindo, for example, who created Auroville, the mother, but especially Sri Aurobindo when he died of his kidney failure, he was in a coma. He came back to help the mother, who saw him on his deathbed in an incredible light, and she said to Sri Aurobindo, she mentions it in her mother's notebook, she explains it, she said to him, you are going to stay now because you can cure yourself, because you can cure your insufficiency. He said, I will never return into this trap, but I will express myself as soon as the supramental is available on earth through a medium. That is what he did. Alisa, what? Through a medium, that's what he did. Bernard from Montreal is the same, he grasped the theater scene well, but he only saw the linear aspect. That's why, like the Ascended Masters, he spoke of evolution, he called it evolutionary psychology, and when he was asked the question of the infinite, of the absolute, you heard him say, Don't worry, a Frenchman named Jean will come and explain this to you. That's what he heard, which would come from France as well, but it's the truth. But I don't get anything out of it. It was written. I can't take advantage of it or glorify it or say look, it's me. No. Nothing is left to chance. Elisa. But he omitted that I was in Spain. Huh. Elisa. He said a Frenchman in Spain. Laughs. Laughs. So, if you want, I can see what is, but it hasn't changed anything. It changed the presentation of the character. Yes, for those who have known me for a long time, everything that was in relief, everything that was salient, everything that was in relief, you see, of the person, of the good areas that I was, that's it. I didn't make any effort. I didn't try to change anything. It all happened by itself. As soon as you accept that you're neither real, but that it is the only real you know, you let go of your personality. You cannot oppose it. Elisa, it did not come between you, your scientific part, your part. Mystical. Well, what was there? Elisa, wasn't it a roadblock being a scientist, a therapist and all that? No, because I had the ability to connect things, because, well, that's just the way I'm made. But actually, before 2012, it wasn't obvious, but afterwards when you live the truth, really, because as I say, you can only recognize yourself. That's the moment when you're no longer fooled by a mission or a role. What do you want to claim within the truth? Nothing. You are in your natural state and you live your life normally. It's not because you're surrounded, for example, where you live, that you know, you're surrounded by elves, dragons, gnomes, fairies, really, but I'm not fooled by any of that. And so, it gives you total freedom to even communicate as an external entity that isn't your own dream. I have no problem with that, because I'm not fooled. And in the script that has been written, you just have to follow what is written. There's no need for you. Remember, everything you think you're holding is holding you. This is the swindle of spirituality and consciousness. Besides, if you talk about conscience by saying, you see your conscience, you deceive yourself. You cannot see what you are. Does the eye that sees, as I was saying this morning, does the eye that sees see itself? Not understandable. Everything you see is just a projection of consciousness. Even white paradise, even the other dimensions, and God knows I've explored them. I traveled under the wings of Mikhail in 2009. I found myself in worlds where there were no landmarks, but when you live freedom and you have the chance to see and feel it, what happens? In fact, you are on the edge of extinction of consciousness. There's a great anguish. It's a black hole, really. Read Castaneda. Castaneda, whatever means you use, describes to you all these worlds that are around, and at that moment, with the shamanic experiences, you are attracted, drawn to the multicolored snake as they say, which is a total illusion, but when you penetrate it, you let go of nothingness, and that spontaneously, effortlessly, you stand at the edge that has been called the edge of being and non-being. You see all these worlds, all these dimensions, all these colors that are like onion skins interconnected to each other, interconnected like layers of onions. But you can no longer be carried away by these visions, by these scenarios, by these worlds, by these universes, because there you see that it's a dream, it's things that pass, that the totality of creation, here's at the highest, is a decoy, it's a lie which is part of the game we had to live, since, I remind you, and it's not yet a concept, all of this, the whole game of creation, has been inscribed out of time in the instant that we called the initial instant, which is nothing other than the final instant. When you see it and you live it, or simply when you accept it mentally, intellectually, well, you are instantly free. It doesn't stop you from raving about a fairy, an elf, a dragon afterwards, but you are no longer fooled. You've perfectly, if I may say so, integrated that it's all just passing. As Biddy said, the universe will disappear, creation will disappear, the universes will disappear, because they were just a projection, if you like, a theater scene, a video game, whatever, they are concepts, but it's a truth. Elisa. But yes, all that happens because we didn't recognize ourselves, we think we're a character. Good yes, Elisa. So, I don't know, so far away from all this. We don't believe in this character anymore. Of course. Elisa. So, it seems extraordinary to us, a dragon or something. Of course it does. Elisa. The character is the least, it's the last thing. Of course it's the last one. Elisa. So the little character needs to feel something. Of course, and it goes very far, because at that moment, you feed the body with suffering, and you realize that in the present instant, you are constantly referring to your past, to this life, or to a so-called karmic causality, or projecting yourself into whatever future you have, and you're not free. You are hooked by the so-called Luciferian illusion, which is not satanic. It is exactly the opposite, but it is not the truth either, and you can only live it. As long as you turn it into a concept or beautiful phrases, you can't get away with it. I can guarantee you that there are people who talk about the absolute, who claim the absolute, but in the simple words they use every day, they are not free. It is a lie. They lie to themselves. So you can spot them from afar. They are talking all the time about their past, all the time, or on the contrary, they are projecting themselves into visions and into a future, or they've identified themselves with a star, God, whatever you want, but it's all a show. But it's an apprenticeship. You can't oppose your perceptions, your visions, your energies because you live them. There's no denying them, they're there. It is a question of letting them pass through you, of not stopping them. That's it. But as Elisa said, we're so used to meeting a dragon, a fairy or an elf. It's so wow, but it's part of the learning process. Elisa, we too can meet each other, my tomatoes, and make wow. Laughter. Yes, that's the truth. When you're simple and natural, you're not going to wow before an angel or an archangel, or the people of nature, but simply before a plant that grows. Sister. But it's all the more interesting because for me, it's lived, it's real, it's not biological, it's, the person who is free does not need to evoke a story, he can talk about history with a capital H. But you're obliged to realize when you're free, that there's nothing that comes out of this past, there's nothing that comes out in your presence of that, and yet, I know, having lived them deeply, all my past lives, absolutely all of them, with the dates, the names, the life, the characters that I find today that were present in other lives, but it is an illusion. Sister. I, on the other hand, arrived without any. I was connected to what, but of what was here in this place, I had no notion. I had absolutely no information. It was information, well nothing, I just had to observe. Here I'm not talking about visions or information, I'm talking about the behavior of the human being in his person. Sister. But yes, when you arrive, you can't be in behavior because you don't understand what's going on, so you're compulsorily in observation. Yes, the observe house. Sister. You can't do anything else. The one. Sister. I don't know why it's there, how it fits together, why, because everything is completely, I see now that everybody understands me, everything is completely crazy. That's the whole teaching of Biddy in 2012, about the observer. Sister. Yes, yes. All of NAL's teaching in 2009 on relative truth, absolute truth. In 2009, when NAL, before the celestial weddings, started to say that we had to let go, abandon to the light, but it was a terror for everyone. But how? The light, we must seek it, we cannot abandon ourselves to the light. No one could understand it. Elisa. In the year 2012, Biddy explained all this. Yes, he explained all this in 2012, it was the rebuttal. You are nothing of what is happening, I am neither this nor that, to which I added, I am also this and that. It's not a paradox, it's not an opposition, it's a complementarity. And then there, what happens? You play your life. If you're a banker, you play the banker. If you're an osteopath, you play the osteopath, but you're free, and you see, there's no more element of the past that interferes, of this life or past lives if you know them. You can't have a body of suffering or body of memory, whatever the trauma lived through, it is no longer present in your presence. That's what I mean when I say that I see people who talk to me about their past, for whatever reason. Elisa, I can't keep up with that. We don't have a body of suffering. The body of suffering is linked to the body of memory, that's all. What has innovative psychology done? Innovative psychology is all that appeared at the beginning of the 20th century. It was Freud, it was Lacan, the only one who escaped it was Jung. All the others have led you down the side paths that have been called psychology. It is an innovative psychology because, when you want to understand, and you have the impression that you understand, as I said before, the problem comes out of your head, but it comes out by where in the body, in the physical body, on the zone that is in total correspondence with the psychological problem, which corresponds to a conflict of territory. The territories are the organs of the body, which are in total affinity, in total heliotripy, in total affinity, with the psychological mechanisms that are inscribed in the territories of the brain. So, it is all Dr. Hammer's medicine, which we are no longer allowed to talk about, otherwise we go to jail, that had perfectly identified this. From then on, you can no longer be fooled. It's total cinema, but cinema, when you accept cinema, it doesn't mean that you're going to retire to a cave or monastery. You're alive, human, with your anger, with your temperament. It doesn't matter. It's a game. Nothing holds you anymore. Don't forget that when you think about the past, whether it is a happy or unhappy scene, whether it is a happy or unhappy moment, you are going to bring it back into the present, and you're in the body of suffering. That doesn't mean you don't have memories. I told you I remember all my lives, but I also remember strong moments, but I can't be affected by them. Laughter. Elisa, there are some, their body of pain, he says. Ah, poor me, what I have lived. And then people, they say to you, oh, I don't know how you can. Yes, I will help you. The syndrome of the rescuer, executioner, victim, rescuer, the infernal triad. Elisa, that's right, because you play the victim. Well, yes. Elisa, then it comes out. Most human relationships are based on that, executioner, victim, rescuer, what we call the infernal triad, which always comes from the little devils I talked about, and where I had given at the time the means to make them disappear at the level of memory. But whatever the technique, because the little devils worked very well, you use them too. Elisa, we use it. We use it. Elisa, she didn't understand anything. Laughter. Elisa, if I appear to someone, if someone appears in my experience and says to me, poor Elisa, what happened to you? Elisa, addressing the sister, okay. Canning. Yes. Elisa, it's someone who, when you have a person who appears and says, poor, you got this, poor you. It would be someone who appeared in my life to give me a new story. Elisa, answer. That is to say, no, she appears, she tells me that, but I can take it or not. Yes. Discussion in Spanish. What does it say? Elisa, because she says that I need someone to tell me that so that I can feed my poor with me. I said no, but it's you through me, you see, you're afraid to be like me. That's right. Discussion in Spanish. Elisa. Well, no, it depends, because I may not need you, but you need me. JLA laughs. Discussion in Spanish. Elisa. No. Discussion in Spanish. Elisa. I don't need her. I don't necessarily need her to come into my life to show me how poor I am. I don't have. Maybe she needs to come into my life for herself, for her story, not for mine. Everyone is for her story. Elisa. Yes, but let's just say that both of us are not involved. I don't need her. She doesn't come to me because I need her. Oh no, who said that? Elisa. No, we didn't. Do you understand what I mean? Laughter. Yes, yes, I understand. Elisa. You understand? Discussion in Spanish in the room. Elisa. She meant that if she came into my life, it was because I needed that. Maybe it's you who needs it, because maybe you're afraid. Maybe, but in any case, when you talk. Discussion in Spanish in the room. So when we talk, when we think, we only talk and think about ourselves. He who said it is who is, says OMA. That is to say, you are stopped in your intellectual perception, because you see through the idea that there is someone else, and then the engine of suffering starts. You see, so everything has been done in this dream, this last dream, so that we come to a sort of dead end that no longer makes sense. That is exactly what is happening on Earth. And even, you see, it goes very far because, for example, when you try to translate what truth is, for example, I use the word embrace, but embrace there is still a movement, there is still a distance. It means that you consider that the other must be embraced, but there is no movement. It means considering that there is still a barrier or a distance, there's you and the other, there is still a relationship. Every relationship is a bond, resonance is freedom, it is not empathy or charisma, it is much more than that. Again, when you taste this, as I've always said, you can only recognize yourself, but as long as you have recognized yourself through a character, a role, a past, a future, you are not free. So of course, I've always said, Autra's Dimensions, AD, has brought us into a story, into a scenario. Elisa. What? Brought into a scenario, a story, to end the story, to write the word end, of what in fact never existed, and never started. Elisa. It's like a film, when you watch the film. Yes, Elisa. You have to look at it and at the end it says end. It's a story, it was a film. That's what it is. In truth, there's no story, there's no script, there's no creation, there's no form, yet your form is there. When I say that, the form it is there. I have the responsibility to maintain this vehicle as you have the responsibility to maintain your car or your house. It's nothing else but that. Without that, you're in denial of the body and you're in denial of the dream, and denial of the dream takes you into a multitude of dreams that are going to be more and more painful. You're going to claim, you're going to express anger, you're going to see rage, but I see that very frequently in people who think they're this or that. The pressure rises because they are stuck on their beliefs, on their experiences. They are not free, but they burn themselves out, whatever the price, because there's no price to pay. If to be free you have to die, the intelligence of the light will make you die, until you give up the weapons. And once again, you recognize yourself. You cannot confuse the natural state, freedom if you want, with any energy, even with the deepest mystical experience, which is realization. As long as you don't let go of that, you are not free. It's all bullshit, it's daydreaming. Coming back to humility, to simplicity, is to accept what is, as it is, without any will to change anything. What is called divine indifference or madness, is in fact only truth. Life is free, but the dream will never be free. It was necessary to write, in time zero, all the possible times and spaces, all the paths of the dream, but this should not be accepted as a concept. Only when you let go of all pretensions. That's why the path of childhood is so important, because it's a path of innocence, and there you're free. You know, there's nothing new in all this. Look even at Therese of Lisieux. I'm not talking about in the channelings, I'm talking about what she wrote in the story of a soul. Of course, there was the adoration of the Christ model, but she had understood everything about it, Therese, as a child. From that point on, when you let go, the more you let go of everything you believe, everything you think, the more you'll feel that freedom, the more you will recognize yourself beyond any script, beyond any character, beyond any world. For me, I think it's for a didactic plan that I've gone through all the dimensions. I had the learning abilities that made me practice tarot before I became a doctor, that made me adhere to just about everything that exists like spirituality, movement and everything. It went very far. I was a Freemason very, very young. Elisa. What was I? I was a Francomason in the high ranks, and from a certain degree, I realized the deception. Because I already knew, I went through orders of ceremonial magic. I practiced ceremonial magic. I don't talk about energy. I spent 25 years of my life doing energetics, and today, I can tell you, it's all for nothing. But there's no mistake in the fact that I went through that, because the difference, as I was telling you, compared to people who express themselves today, with that same tone, will say, these sisters, often sisters, went directly to the absolute and the absence, but me, it had to be in the script that I bring back a lot of people who are in spirituality, who are the most dangerous. But I only know that now. When I was living it, I didn't ask myself any questions. I was living it. My whole life has been like that. I only let be what was. Despite the character of Aries, you know, the ram, it is useful for something, and in relation to that, I always let be. I was able to really dissect the energetic, psychological, neuroscientific and spiritual mechanisms, and seeing the whole picture of this fantastic scam. But today, I'm telling you, you don't have to go through that. You need authenticity, you need naturalness, you let it all go through and you're free. As I was saying this morning to a sister, there, afterwards you can't help but notice that everything is fluid. There are still people today who ask me, oh yes, it must have been terrible your period when you were charged by justice. That's not true. It was the happiest period of my life. I had disappeared from this world. There, so if you want, that's why when people say to me, or when they say, Elisa, oh poor thing, no, that's your problem, it's not yours. Everything is inverted. The simulacrum can't create anything, it can only invert things. And a gay pandemic has been unleashed. Elisa, triggered. And a gay pandemic in 2018, and they're triggering a viral pandemic. Elisa, that was last year in April. No, already in 2018. Elisa, how, when should we do? From. Elisa, when did we have the project of the? Oh yes, the GAPE. Last year, it was May last year. After the gay pandemic allowed for many to remove the masks of the person and history, and what is happening in the world today, you observe exactly the opposite. Everybody masks themselves, everybody is afraid of everybody, of those who believe in it. So, these are mirror images. There's the truth, or the story of the end of time that we are living, the end of time, which signs the end of the worlds, which in fact have never been real. There's no loss, there's no gain, everything has always been there, and you too, you have always been there, not the character, he is mortal. The hardest thing to accept is that we are everything. We are the origin and resolution of everything. So, we solved that by saying there's one consciousness, there's only one consciousness, white paradise, but the consciousness is a trap, but you can't accept it as a concept, but when you live it, you know it. That's what Jimmy Savine's NDT, remembering, the motto of Coopsers, is all about remembering, not past lives but the initial moment, which is nothing but the final moment. Because indeed, when you stand on the edge of being and non-being, you see all these worlds as I said, but they are all interpenetrated, even the enclosed worlds. We talk about parallel reality, in science or in physics, we know that. You realize that physicists today are able to demonstrate that we are in a computer simulation and yet we are in it, and we cannot oppose it. This is the theory of the complaint that I explained to you in neuroscience. Everything you oppose is reinforced. I took the example of complaint theory in psychology. All psychologies take you into history. It's not the story that has to be solved, it's the illusion in the dream. And paradoxically, you can only see it and live it by accepting it. That's the principle that we have called welcoming, but, in the end, there's nothing to welcome, but I use that word to allow you to understand that you're welcoming, you are already accepting since you're there, everything else is cinema, and when you adopt that, even in concept or mentally, you are free. It's so simple, and you can say it when you live it, because for the one who doesn't live it, he always feels that it's complicated. Right? Laughs. Do you need a little break? Yes, so it's 11:45, we'll take it from 1 to 2, okay. Here a little break, fruit and everything. By Jean-Luc Ayoun. Less transformations. Transcription from French. Transcriptions Father English Revised Translation. LMF.